Welcome to episode 41 of Run It Straight, where we answer your questions about how to get better at rugby league. We don't sidestep the difficult topics, but rather give direct, straight up answers. In essence, we run it straight. All right, our first question. How does junior reps work? I want to make a rep side, but I don't know how it works, how you get picked, and all of that. All right, so we answered something similar to this a couple of weeks ago. Number one, you've got to get invited to a trial.
Yep.
That is
That's
what
the
it is.
best-
I mean, it
that's
would have
the
been
biggest
good. You
thing.
should have.
Yep.
Anyone who sends these in the future, just let us know what district it is that you're playing, because then we might have a little bit more information about that. But you need to get invited to a trial. Then you need to play well at the trial. Sometimes you play well at a trial and you don't get picked. Sometimes you play well at a trial and you do get picked. What typically happens is most of the clubs will then pick an initial squad, and that initial squad might be 35 or 40 boys. And the way that things are trending a little bit at the moment is they'll then train those boys for maybe 4 or 5 weeks, and then they might have a trial or 2 trials before Christmas.
Yeah.
And then after those trials, they'll usually cut that squad they might cut it from 40 down to 30. And some boys will just get cut. Some boys that are a year young, they might move down to a development squad. Then they'll have a short break over Christmas. They might have another trial or 2
After Christmas.
After
yeah.
Christmas,
Yep.
and then they'll cut the squad down to 23 or 24 or 25 boys,
Yep.
and that's your final squad. So yeah, like I said, if you've made the initial summer squad a year early, that's fantastic. Hopefully you can get as much training in as possible. There's a fair chance that you may well get cut, but most clubs will have a development side that they'll push you into, and even those development sides, they usually do get to play some games as well.
Yeah, usually 1 or 2 around that January, February.
Yeah, they
period
usually
as well.
get a few
Yep.
games, and it's not a full competition and a full, is it 7 or 9 game season?
9.
9 game
9
season.
games.
So it's not a full season, but there's usually 1, 2, 3, 4 games, something like that, that they will get to play. That's essentially how it works.
That's yeah.
Look, getting the trial, which we've talked
That's the
about
hardest
before,
part. Yeah.
depending again on the competition that you're in, some have completely open trials, some they'll be invite only to within the district, and the way that typically works is they will tell you, they send scouts out and they look at players, but most of the time they don't actually do that. What happens is they'll come and they'll talk to the coach of a team. So let's say, I don't know, you're in the Bulldogs comp and you play for the under 15 Barrel Bears. They might have a scout who might come out to a game, but he'll go and speak to the coach and say, who are your best 4 or 5 players? They'll have a look at those players. They may see someone else who stands out in that game, but then they'll write those names down on a list. And they basically go around to all of the clubs, and the coaches will give them an idea of the players to look at, and the coach may say, look, this guy is an absolute superstar. And they might, and that might be enough to get him into an initial squad, or at least into the invitation only trial. Okay? Anything really to add to that?
That's for Harold, Mats and SJ. If there's obviously, for the younger audience, if they're looking at development squads and everything like that, like the winter developments. As what Joe just said, they're usually sending a scout out to a game and then speaking to the coach afterwards. And then that coach will send, as you said, the best 4 or 5, maybe 6 players, depending on the district, to that scout, and that scout will then compile the development side. For the winter, and that's usually a month, maybe 2 months, depending on the district, and they'll play 2 or 3 games against other districts just to give them a taste of what representative football is. And then that's obviously to build skills and everything like that around to then hopefully get selected for a Harold Mats trial when you're a bit older at that 16, 17
Yeah, so at the moment,
age.
Harold Mats is 17s,
Yes.
but the season, which starts in February, is boys that are 17s that year. So to be eligible for Harold Mats, you need to be playing under 15s or under 16s.
Yes.
Because the following year, which is when you guys play, they'll obviously all be a year older. So that's when it's under 17. So if you want to play Mats, 15s and 16s are eligible to get picked. For SG Ball, it's boys that are playing 17s and under 18s that are eligible to pick for that. Flag is 21s, so again, we're just going up in 2-year increments. It did used to be 16, 18s and 20s,
Yes.
But when COVID happened, and basically the seasons got cancelled. They didn't want a whole group of boys to miss out on development, so they just shifted all of those age brackets up. And most clubs with their development teams it's usually like an under 16s development and an under 18s development. So it sort of fills in the gaps, if that makes sense.
Yep, that's perfect.
But yeah, how does junior reps work? That's basically how it works. If you're in your district, talk to your coach. Is probably the best way. How can I get picked, or how can I put my name forward to get selected? Look, we've covered this stuff before. If you want to trial outside of district, when it gets closer to it, so sort of the end of the season, July, August, most of the clubs that will be having either open trials or where you can apply to trial, they will start to advertise it. There's a Facebook page.
It's our
I think it's called, no, this is a different one actually. Maybe that one's good too. I think it's called Rugby League Representative Pathways. It's a Facebook page, and they are very, very good at when a lot of these announcements get made, that time of the year. They post up the trials, they post up the emails that you need to send in applications to and everything else like that. So keep your eyes open for it. Within your district, you should be able to find out off your coach or the secretary or president at your club. Ask them those questions if you want to trial outside of district. Honestly, pick up the phone. I know that this generation doesn't seem to like making phone calls to people, but if you want to get your dad to do it, that's fine. But pick up the phone and make a phone call and find out when those trials are. We've said this so many times before. Get film of your games. Some of these, if you're coming from out of district, they won't accept you unless they've got a film and they can see that you're a decent enough player and you can put together a highlight reel from the year. So make sure you're filming, and don't just film one game. Don't just have your mum pull the phone out every time you get the ball. Film the whole game, because there's a lot of things that are going to happen that they're not going to be quick enough to pull the phone out. And over the course of a season, if you're just filming from the minute it starts to the minute it ends, you're going to pick up every single thing that happens. So you should be able to compile a list that can show your particular skill set off.
Yeah, simple.
Yep. All right, next question. How do I gain confidence on the field? Well, my answer to this is you don't gain or you don't build confidence. You build evidence, right? So you build up such an overwhelming amount of evidence that you know that you can do what you say you can do, because confidence comes as a result of evidence, not the other way around. So example I'll give. Let's say you're playing a video game, right? And you come up against, it's like one of those level games, and at the end of the level, there's like a boss, right? And first time you play against the boss, it's like, yeah, I'm going to crush it. And then you die, he loses no health, and you're like, well, that sucked. And then you reload it and you come back again. This time, maybe you get his health down a little bit, and then you're dead. Third time, you get his health down halfway, but what you notice is, like, I don't know, if you come around and you hit him from behind or whatever, he can't block that, and that's okay. So the way to beat him is to come around and hit him from behind. So by the fifth time you play against this particular boss, you kill him, you don't lose any health, and you're like, right, I've got it down pat. And so anytime you play that game again, you get up to that level, you just butcher him. Now, you're going to be going into that, and you've got confidence because you've done it enough times, you've built up sufficient evidence, and you've built up the skill set to be able to execute what it is that you want to do. Yeah. Gaining confidence in a game is exactly the same. Let's say that you need to improve your confidence at catching a high ball. You've got to go down the park, you reef the ball up in the air, and you sit there and you catch it. And you do that 20 times and 30 times and 40 times. And you do it sometimes when you're standing underneath it, sometimes when you're running onto it, sometimes when you've got to jump from a standing start, sometimes when you've got to jump from a running start. You do that over and over and over and over again. And then when the ball gets put up during a game and you've got to catch it, you're fine because you've been there before. You've done that before. You've beaten this boss at the battle, and you know, at least within reason, what to do. There's always going to be outside things, someone's going to hit you from the wrong end. And we see this in the NRL, but you also see in the NRL, the really good fullbacks, most of the time they catch the ball. Everyone makes mistakes, but that's where confidence comes from, is doing something enough times with enough repetition that it gets boring, and then you still keep doing it. That's when you get confidence, because you've done it. I think in the last episode I talked about baking a cake.
Yes.
And when you've baked the cake, when you've made the recipe 50 times, you don't need the recipe, you know what you're doing, and you know the result is going to be pretty standard and pretty similar every single time. So you haven't been clear, you haven't really said here what you're trying to build confidence in, but a lot of players say, how do I build confidence? Yeah. And it's the same. Why don't you have confidence? Because you haven't built up enough evidence, you haven't done enough times to know that you can get the outcome that you want. Yeah. Anything you want to add on that?
And a way that you can gain confidence is by practicing your skills as much as you can. Going back in the episode, I think it was last episode, we were speaking about passing. I think one of the questions was how can I improve my passing? Same thing.
100%.
Adds into this.
And so this is something I was going to talk about, was the skill acquisition continuum.
Yes.
Remember us talking about that before?
Yep.
So there's 4 levels. There's unconscious incompetence. This is when you suck at something, but you don't even know that you suck at it, right? Then you've got conscious incompetence. This is when you get to the level that you know enough to know that you suck at something.
Yep.
Then you've got conscious competence, which is when you've got to think about it really, really hard, then you can do it correctly. And then you've got unconscious competence. So think about when you're a little, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, or maybe even a little bit older for some kids who are a little bit slower, that's fine. When you're learning how to tie your shoes up, right? And there's a point when you just can't do it. So mum or dad's got to tie your shoe. And then there's a point when you know what should happen and they sit there with you for 10 minutes, but you're still kind of getting it wrong, so they help you a little bit. Then when you sit there and it still takes like 10 minutes, but if you focus and you're sitting there, your tongue's sticking out and you can somehow tie that shoelace. Whereas now, you're 13, you're 14, you're 15, you're tying your shoelace, you're listening to something, you're watching TikTok at the same time, and then you're talking to your mate and you're not thinking about tying your shoe. Or to people that are older that are driving now, think about when, you're younger than I am, when you first got your license and you're on your P's and you're driving out on your own, you're watching everything. You're like, I've got to turn here, I've got to do this, and you're all rigid and you're this and that. Whereas now you could be chatting to a mate on the phone, or you could be, of course, you're not holding your phone, you're on hands-free set because that would be bad. Don't do that, children. Or it could be someone next to you. You could be singing along with the song, your mind's somewhere else, and you've got a 30-minute drive. You hop in the car, you're singing, it's onto the 3rd or the 4th song, and you pull into your driveway, and you can't remember driving home. You can't remember any of those things because you are now, when it comes to the skill of driving, you are at the unconscious competence stage. So you need to work through all of those stages. This is why we say practice all the time, because that's what happens. At the start, you don't know what you need to do, and you don't know that you don't know what you need to do. Then you know what you need to do, but you're still not skillful enough to do it. Then you know what you need to do, and you're skillful enough to do it if you focus really, really hard on it. Then eventually you don't even have to think about it, and you'll still execute the skill. It's once you get to that level, that's when you've been doing it, when you'll get confidence, which we talked about in the question, which is what this is all about. You'll get confidence when you get to unconscious competence, where you don't have to think about it. So again, you're throwing a pass, you're throwing a 15-meter cutout spiral, and you're not thinking about, I need to have my hands here, I need to catch the ball a certain way, I need to spin with this. You're not thinking about any of that. You're watching the defensive line, you're looking as his hips turned in, my wing is clear, I've got to cut out 2 guys and get it to him. So you just get the ball and you put the ball where you want it to be. You're not having to think about any of the mechanics of the actual pass itself.
Yep.
That's where confidence comes. Practice, practice, practice.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
That's right. That's right.
That's the saying.
All right. Next question. How can I improve my ball running, make more meters, break the line? I am 16, 170 centimeters, 72.2 kilos. I play second row.
It's good. We got specifics.
We got specifics.
That's good.
Now, that's good. Start off with a really, really quick and simple. You got to get bigger, stronger, get more powerful, and you need to train your speed. If you're looking to, if you want to make more meters and break the line, we need leg speed, we need acceleration. Before we dig into it, I would be saying, what is your goal? Try and put that in there in the future, because it says here you're 16. So is your goal to make Harold Matts this year? Because if it is, it might not be. Maybe you just want to get better, which is fine. But if it is, I would say you're a little bit, well, not a little bit, you're a lot too light. 72 kilos is a second rower.
Yeah, that's very light. Most wingers at that age are starting to get into the 75, 80 kilos.
Yeah, that's wingers, and that's and we're talking a second rower. So you're going to need to spend some time adding on size before doing anything. Yep. I think you might need to be patient and think this might not be the year that you're going to make rep footy if you're that light. And if you're that light and you're telling us that you're not really making that many meters or breaking the line, I think we've got a bit of work to do.
Yes.
But look, we've had plenty of boys that have come in and they've been 5.5 out of 10 players, nowhere near making a rep side, and then 2.5 or 3 years later, they're absolutely crushing it just because they've worked really, really hard for 2.5, 3 years.
Yep.
We did a Joe Knows episode. I literally think the thumbnail says how to make a rep side. I'll get Spiro to link it, but that literally talks about specifics in regards to this kind of thing. What do you need to do, and about getting your strength to a certain point in a few different lifts, getting your fitness to a particular point. But let's address this, Cal. Yep. If someone was to ask you that question, how can I improve my ball running, make more meters, break the line, and those are his measurements.
Yep.
Have a crack.
So as you said, get stronger, bigger, faster, more powerful. That's the simplest answer we can give you. In terms of playing, you got to be almost selective of how you take your runs, and in certain situations, how you run, when you run, who you're running at. There's going to be, if you're a second rower, you're going to be put up on a halfback or a centre a lot. So there's plenty of opportunities where he'll be able to make plenty of meters, break the line, even get an offload past the line. Ball running, I find, is a lot about your intent to carry. If you have the best intent and you want to break through the line, you want to hurt someone with the ball, you want to bump someone off.
You've got to run hard.
You've got to run as hard as you can. You've got to think about running through a brick wall.
That's right, and accelerate
anytime
into
you
the
get
line.
The ball. Exactly.
Not take off as fast as you can, and then when you get there, you start pulling the handbrake
Yep.
and slowing down and worrying about the impact. Believe me, if you actually run harder, the impact isn't as bad as if you run softer. If you run softer, you're going to get creamed.
And it's not getting the ball and then accelerating at the line, as Joe just said. It's when you're getting that ball off the hook or a half, or whoever you're getting the ball off of, you want to be hitting that line at 100 mile an hour. That comes down, again, that goes back to your intent to carry. And if you have that intent to run through the line, bust through the line, like you're running through a brick wall, you will make some impact into that line. You might not get a quick play the ball, you might not break the line every single time, but you'll have enough of a carry that the team could possibly play off the back of you.
Yep.
And watch rugby league. Payne Haas won't make a break every single time, but everyone knows that he's such a dangerous ball runner because he has that intent that every time he runs the ball, he's going to be either running over the top of someone, getting an offload.
Yeah. You've got to well and truly stop him. And it's the same if you look at like Fanua Blake.
Yeah, Fanua Blake's
or even
the same.
if you said you're a second rower, Angus Crichton's in really good form at the moment, and he does not jog into the line. He goes 100%.
He's going
runs at
as hard as he can. Yep.
Jaden Stewart at the Dragons is having a good year because he's running with it. You look at him and he looks angry, like he wants to hurt someone every time he's running the ball.
Liam Martin, same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Just they're wired different. They're wired to hurt people when they run the ball.
Now, we've said get bigger. You need to be lifting weights. Okay, it doesn't just mean eat and get fat. You need to eat in a calorie surplus, absolutely, but you need to be lifting weights a couple of times a week. If we want to be training your speed, that means you need to have you need to be training your speed separately a couple of times a week. Ideally, the day before you do leg weights, or if it's going to be on the same day, train your speed first. Don't do leg weights. Don't do lower body in the morning and then do your speed work in the afternoon. Your nervous system's going to be trashed. It's going to be a garbage session. But if you want to run faster, you need to train to run faster by having speed sessions. Put some size on, build that into strength, and then start developing power. But to be honest, at 72 kilos, and look, 170 isn't particularly tall either. You got to turn yourself into a little nugget.
Yep. Yeah, you've got to get real strong, real thick.
Yeah, because look, you want to break the line, you need to have some force behind you.
Yep.
So the biggest thing that I can say is you need to put on some size.
Yeah. And on that, it's definitely going to take time.
Yep.
It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 weeks or 12 weeks. It's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on how you develop, to get to that point.
Yeah. Like if you're 72, and let's say that right now you start focusing on this. Okay. What are we? So you've got 6 months, give or take, left this year.
Yeah.
There's no reason you couldn't start next year somewhere between, say, 78 and 82 kilos, right? And then by the end of that year, so that's your first year of eligibility next year for SG Bull. And again, I think you've still got some more work to do. But by the second year, you could be high 80s, pushing up to 90 kilos.
Yep.
And at that height, that's probably going to be you're going to be nuggety. You might have close to a double body weight squat by then, which should be capable of generating some significant power when you run the ball. Yep. So you've got to dig in for the long haul here, put some size on, get stronger, and then take it from there.
Yep, perfect.
And that's a wrap for this episode. So guys, please keep sending in your questions. Please like, share, follow these videos. Get your mates to follow them, subscribe to us. Anything else, Spiro, that I need to mention? Send your questions in. I did say that. And if you want to, if you don't want the question to be answered, that's fine. You can actually send me a personal question. Send it on Instagram, DMs. I'm the one who answers those questions, so I'll give you as much detail as I can. I'm just here to help you guys out. Other than that, thank you, Cal.
Thank you.
And we will see you in the next one.